So, talking about use cases, let's try to focus on real world examples. Let's try to identify a number of areas that would be very tangible for people to understand in a given context, in a given a company's environment, what it is that those technologies are doing. If we take a case study, if we take an example in a given industry, in a given department inside a company, if you could maybe try to, highlight a couple of examples for people to really picture practically what it means.
Yeah, sure. So I'll give you one that's sort of broad-based that almost everybody has a problem with, and then one that's a little bit more, or a couple that are perhaps a little bit more specific to the outcome that the businesses wanted to do. Um, so in thinking about automation, there's again sort of wide spectrum problem set. So the wide spectrum problem set that we see almost everywhere is in the finance department. Everybody, every single company, I don't care who you are, you're dealing with invoices in one way, shape, or form. All right. Well, so how do invoices come in the form of an SMB? Well, you probably have a bunch of invoices that are coming in over email. Someone in your finance team is opening up these emails saying, okay, there's a PDF to pay for this invoice, there's a Word document, there's a link. They're taking this information, they're probably logging into QuickBooks or Sage or Xero or whatever accounting software they're using. They're looking for the vendor. They're probably using Slack or Microsoft Teams or whatever communication tool to then ask the person who requested the product or service whether it's okay to process this invoice. Then they go back into QuickBooks. So it's sort of like the same standard flow everywhere. And so a standard use case automation there is let's just automate invoices. So that's a bot that would live in your email inbox. Every single time an invoice comes in, automatically logs into your accounting software, checks for the vendor, checks if there's a purchase order, for instance, automatically sends a message on Slack or Microsoft Teams. Is this approved? Yes or no? And then it can then apply business logic rules. So for example, any invoice under $500 automatically process. Over 500, verify with this person. Over 1,000, verify with that person. And so immediately right there, the average saving that we see is anywhere from 100 to 250 employee hours per year in just processing invoices for an SMB. Like that's pretty material. Now you may think that that's like very basic, but imagine just saving 200 employee hours a year off of this one simple mundane task, right? So that's simple, that's pretty straightforward, and there's a myriad of ways of solving that with automation. So that's broad-based. In terms of like application specific, we've really seen the gamut of it all, but there's a couple that I think would be really interesting to highlight. One is everything around automation of documents. And so a lot of clients and a lot of companies in general automate things like producing shipping documents, for example, if you're, an e-commerce or you ship products, right? Perhaps you're dealing with reports for your clients that need to be produced. Perhaps you're producing, so we deal a lot with non-for-profits. So producing tax receipts for tax season. It's tax season right now, so we're producing these documents. If you're receiving requirements from clients, whether it's in PDF or whatever, extracting that information from the document. If you're dealing with invoices, again, extracting information from these invoices or these purchase orders. So reading and producing documents in an automated way, really, we do a ton of these and we see a lot of requirements. So again, that's one less thing that your team would have to do. And again, it doesn't have to solve 100% of the process beginning to end, but maybe say it solves 20, 30%. That's like the annoying bit.
Yeah.
We had a use case where a client receives a lot of what they call RFPs, requests for proposals. So they get inundated with these. That's usually like anywhere from a 5 to a 30-page PDF document that someone has to read, extract requirements, figure out when they have to submit it by, and so forth. So what we did is automation to automatically read the information from the RFP, use AI to help prioritize that for their sales team so they can know which RFP they have to answer to first, right? So that's just like one less thing that just optimizes and creates efficiencies, right? So that's sort of like a second use case.
Yeah,
The
if I may, before you go into the last example, one point that is really important that you said is the fact that automation is not black and white. It's not either I do nothing or I do everything, right? You can automate partially the process, 20, 30, 40, 50% of the process, and yet reap the benefit of that automation, right? So it's not, I got to automate 100%. You are aiming at automating 100%, and over time you might, go towards that goal. But if you start and you just automate 20, 30, 40%, it's already a huge impact. And there's a business case just within those 20, 30%, right?
Completely agree. Completely agree. And again, I think you coined it or really, really well here. The amount of efficiency that you get even by just automating 1%, it just compounds over time. It's like interest, right? And so
Yep.
over time, your team keeps on benefiting. And then you sort of like get addicted into this bug of then you've entered this automation journey, which now you're really thinking about it in this coefficient of efficiency. The third use case that I would see that we're starting to see really a lot of is, especially in the SMB space, is often there are systems that you wish could talk to each other just a little bit better, and they don't, natively at least, right? And so, we had a use case recently of a company that wanted to use this platform called Paylocity with Service Titan. So they use Service Titan to schedule and do all of the service calls and so forth for their their fleet of service providers, and then they do Paylocity for the payment processing side of things. These systems kind of speak to each other, but not natively well enough. And so being able to build these sort of custom plugins to make systems that don't speak with each other well, to speak to each other well, to synchronize data and flows of information that don't usually flow with each other, that's just another massive, advantage gain by having finally a system of record that has all of your information by cobbling the information from the systems that don't speak to each other. So those would be like real practical examples, but we can, there are other areas that I think can be explored. But I think what's really important is to figure out where is the department in your organization that has the biggest bottleneck, right? And often, we come in with a certain assumption that it is going to be in sales or marketing operations or whatever. But often, like we were just meeting with a company, their big bottleneck is actually in recruiting. And so it was all around how do we optimize their HR processes so that they can leverage LinkedIn to do their job posting, use AI to match the job resumes being submitted with the job description, synchronize all of this in the applicant tracking system so that, again, they can prioritize and optimize their recruiters' teams or time, rather.
Oh, that's amazing.